Imposter syndrome can be defined as a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evident success. It is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. I have imposter syndrome, and today I want to talk about it. Before we get started, thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. I've experienced imposter syndrome throughout my entire life, and especially during my years here on YouTube. One of the things that's really helped me overcome my imposter syndrome is hearing other people talk about their experience with it. So I'm hoping that me sitting here talking about my imposter syndrome will make a difference to somebody who is watching this video and maybe doesn't even realize that they experience imposter syndrome, or that it's like an actual thing, or they think they're the only person who has ever felt the way that they feel. To put imposter syndrome in my own words, or my experience in my own words, I would say that it's like a fear that people are going to figure out that you're not as good as they think you are. I love this quote that I found online that says, "Imposter syndrome is feeling well out of your depth, yet already entrenched in the situation, internally feeling that you're not skilled enough, experienced enough, or qualified enough to justify being there." And imposter syndrome is most common among people who are high achieving. So that could be students, it could be entrepreneurs. It's very common among people in creative industries. And people with imposter syndrome are really good at undermining their own accomplishments. Some notable people who have publicly discussed having imposter syndrome include Tina Fey, Meryl Streep, Tom Hanks, Kate Winslet, even Jennifer Lopez, which, to be fair, she probably is a fraud. Like, who looks like that at 50? Professionally, I've experienced imposter syndrome so many times with opportunities that have come my way through YouTube and blogging. I cannot tell you guys the number of times that I have been approached by a brand and I have felt anxiety over it because I don't feel like I'm accomplished enough to deserve that opportunity, and I fear that they just don't realize that I'm not like good enough to work with them for this opportunity. For example, about 6 years ago, I was contacted by The Rachel Ray Show to come to New York and be on a beauty panel for one of the episodes of the show. And I did accept the opportunity and go, as some of you may know because I talked about it at the time. But when that email landed in my inbox and I first read it, my initial reaction wasn't excitement and joy because it was such a cool opportunity. It was nervousness and fear because I felt like, oh no, like this is so cool, but they don't realize that like I'm not good enough for this opportunity. And there were a couple of other beauty YouTubers on the panel with me, and I remember looking at them and thinking, well, of course they were invited to be on the show. They're amazing. Like, they're totally qualified, but like I'm definitely not. And everything that I'm saying right now might just sound like I have low self-esteem, like maybe that's what I'm really struggling with. But imposter syndrome actually isn't necessarily a lack of confidence, but more a psychological process where you incorrectly assess your abilities compared to those of your peers. But something that research has suggested is that imposter syndrome tends to be linked to perfectionism, which is absolutely something that I have struggled with my entire life. I have had perfectionist tendencies for as long as I can remember. I remember in 4th grade, every week we had a homework assignment and it was due every Friday by the end of the day, and we all had a folder on the wall with our name on it, and you would put your assignment in your folder. And one Friday, school let out, I got on the bus and I went home, and when I got home, I realized I had forgotten to put my homework in the homework folder, and I immediately started crying. I was upset because this was like 2/3 of the way through the school year and I had never missed a Friday homework assignment. Like, I had a streak going. And also, I want to say, for the sake of my parents' reputation, I had really wonderful, loving parents who were not super critical of me. And also, to be really candid and honest, I have felt imposter syndrome about meeting you guys. In the past, whenever I've been at an event that's kind of like a meetup type event, like back in the day with IMATs and things, I have felt imposter syndrome, like people are going to be here and they're going to meet me and they're going to realize that I'm not whatever they thought or hoped I would be. They would find out that I'm just a normal person and I'm underwhelming, and they actually would not even understand why anyone would watch me on YouTube anymore. Like, I just wouldn't live up to whatever they were hoping I would be. Something else that I found really interesting when I dove into research about imposter syndrome is that statistically it affects more women than it does men, which is simultaneously interesting and infuriating. Women tend to judge their own performance as worse than it objectively is. Now, I've come a long way in managing my imposter syndrome. It affected me the most, I would say, in my early to mid 20s, but especially over the last few years, I've learned how to manage it and combat it more. The first thing that really helps is I recognize that I have it, and I also recognize that other people have it. If so many people are experiencing this, then these feelings are not a real thing that's actual fact. And that's the second thing that I tell myself to cope with it, is I try to separate what I'm feeling from what is fact. And then the third thing that's really helped me is to just talk about it, because when you say this stuff out loud, you kind of realize how unfounded some of it is. If you're experiencing imposter syndrome, open up a conversation with the people in your life, and you might be really surprised at who else experiences this. So that is my experience with imposter syndrome and how I have learned to cope with it. If you have any experience with imposter syndrome or thoughts or opinions on any of this, I would love to know what you think down in a comment below. This is definitely a different type of topic for a video for this channel, I feel like, but I find it really fascinating. I find anything psychological really fascinating, and this is something that's definitely affected my life, and I'm hoping that this video, even for one person, will help you moving forward with imposter syndrome. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so that you are notified when new videos are posted. And before we go, let's talk about today's sponsor, Squarespace. I use Squarespace for my own blog. It's allisonanderson.com. I share all of my travel itineraries and recaps from trips that I've taken on there. And I love the layout that I have. It's so clean and minimal and great for photos. They have tons of layouts to choose from, and they're all so beautiful. I also love that Squarespace has a blogging app so I can manage all of my posts on the go. So head over to squarespace.com to sign up for a free trial, and once your site is all designed and it's looking good and it's ready to launch, visit squarespace.com/allisonanderson to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.